Hello and welcome to Newsmakers for this Thursday, September 26, 2024. I'm Louie Butko. Thank you for joining us. There's a lot to get to with my guest today, so I don't want to waste any time. I'd like to welcome back to the show Ward 2 Councillor for the City of Hamilton, Cameron Kroetsch, and we were just joking walking in. There's a lot going on downtown.
There is, yeah.
But, lots of good stuff, lots of challenges that people of downtown face. Big day yesterday at Council as the first outdoor shelter got approved. Is this a milestone moment for council, for this council, and for the City of Hamilton?
Yeah, I'd be cautious using the word milestone. I think this is a small step we're making to try and address some outdoor shelter needs. It's a temporary solution, and that's a big word that staff have put at the front of this, right? It's a temporary outdoor shelter to try and help while we're managing this solution and waiting for housing to come online and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a big moment in terms of us trying to think through this really difficult problem we're facing with all the different crises that are overlapping, homelessness, opioid addiction, different things that we're seeing about housing affordability, right? So this might be able to help a group of people, up to 80 people, to find a bit better accommodations than being forced to live out in public spaces. So I think it's important, but I don't want people to think this is like a permanent solution or that we're, this is something to be excited about. This is a pretty tough situation and we're responding the best we can.
So what would this look like successfully? If we come have this conversation 6 months from now, what would look like a success for this temporary solution?
Yeah, 6 months from now, hopefully everything's up and running. And what we're doing is we're seeing on-site help for people. So we have administrators who can assist with filling out paperwork for people who need to. We have housing services advocates and professionals who are on-site helping people access housing. The goal here would be to do a little bit more in terms of being able to find folks who need help and move them from services to housing. Right? So temporary services are not housing. Shelter is not housing. What people need is housing. And so the goal here, if it's successful, is to get people from places where they're forced to live outside to housing itself.
There's always going to be some reluctancy from those who are unhoused for going into places like this. I use the St. Catharines. There was one that was set up in St. Catharines. They set it up. They're having issues at the site as well, and there's still reluctancy for people to get into shelters. What people who want to stay in encampments, what's going to be for them?
That's a good question. I think the way I look at it is not that people are necessarily wanting to stay in encampments, but the rules around shelters sometimes are extremely strict. This is meant to be a low barrier shelter, meaning couples, gender diverse folks, people with pets, especially folks who need pets to help them with a disability. We're going to be making access for those folks and trying to keep it as low barrier as possible so that people want to be there. But we know, and we've known for decades in Hamilton, that there are folks who are chronically unhoused, folks who perhaps for reasons that maybe we don't understand are not able to access those low barrier supports, and they're going to be living outside of that, and we have to find a way to support them as well. Again, I think it's not going to be a great group of folks who aren't able to access the new shelter spaces, because these 80 beds are part of 272 the city is bringing online. So when we have 300, 400, 500 folks who are living outside, this is going to help a lot of them to be able to transition in, but it's not a perfect solution. So we still have to have compassion and make space for people who are forced to live in conditions they didn't choose.
So speaking of compassion, the encampment policy, of course, that's being worked on as well. A lot of folks saying, they're taking over green spaces. They want to feel safe when they go to parks. What would your response be to somebody who's sitting here listening to this, watching this, saying, I can't go to Bayfront Park because I don't feel safe there?
Yeah, first I want to say I'm sorry, because I think that's really awful. Everybody wants to be able to be in the park and feel safe in a park and be able to use our neighborhood parks, especially downtown. We know, looking at the Hamilton Parks Master Plan, which was done, that the place that green space is needed most in our city is in wards 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, 2, 3, 4 to be fair. There's quite a bit in Ward 1, but those areas are where we need in the lower city to see more green space. So if folks are competing for that green space and it's getting denser and denser and denser downtown, yeah, they want to be able to have a place to go, to hang out, to recreate, play, their kids to play, that kind of thing. At the same time, we can't tell people they have nowhere to exist. So when we say to them, we don't have enough space indoors for you, it just doesn't exist. We can't meet the capacity and the demands that are here for housing, and they're forced to live outside. side. We can't simply say to people, well, you have nowhere to go, and we're going to continue to push you along. What that ends up being is we're essentially chasing people around in a circle. And as I've said before, at some point, they're going to have nowhere to go. Are we suggesting pushing people out of the limits of the city to then, again, what other city, where are they going to go, these kinds of things. So I think we have to be careful about that. And yes, it's not a good situation. And I don't think anyone thinks that encampments are the solution or that having folks live in parks is a solution. And I'll be clear about this. The people who are forced to live in our green spaces in public don't want to live in our green spaces in public. Can you imagine what it must be like for every single thing you do to be watched by everybody in the community? So this isn't a situation anybody wants to be in. I think these shelter spaces will help. Ultimately, we need provincial, federal governments to help us with the housing costs, because we're talking about billions of dollars to solve the problem that they put us into. And until they're willing to come to the table with that money, we're going to be dealing with this for years.
Yeah, and you mentioned federal money. Ottawa says they're going to give $250 million specifically for encampment. We saw in St. Catharines sort of going in the opposite direction. They took money away from outreach workers. They say that money is going to go specifically to encampment cleanup. To the issue of supports, and again, even at this new tiny shelter site, this in your ward, what do those conversations look like to get support services there? Is it a 24-hour thing? How many different agencies need to be involved in those conversations, and can you have them in time for this to be up and running?
Yes, so we've already partnered with Good Shepherd, as staff said at the meeting, to help us to run this site. But yeah, we're going to need some support from folks. Cities can't do this work on their own because we don't necessarily employ all the folks who have expertise in shelters, expertise in helping folks navigate systems. So we partner with agencies. I think we're going to be able to get it up and running. The city has been looking at these kinds of issues for a while now. So when we looked at the HATS solution last year, there was a large sort of look at all the different properties in the area. And those conversations haven't sort of died. They've been ongoing. And then when Councillor Huang brought this motion forward to see us investigate an outdoor shelter, and the mayor kept it going, right, then staff said, look, we've got this research, we can do this, and we think they can make it happen before winter. So they said they can make it happen, and I trust that they can do it.
The mayor has used her strong mayor powers recently in a development in Stony Creek, saying we need more houses. What have you made of the mayor's push for affordable housing? Is she doing enough? Are you supportive of what she's done so far?
In terms of focusing on affordable housing, she said out of the gate after she was elected, this was a priority for her. And many of us ran on that being a priority. And so I support her trying to push for more affordable housing options. And that Stony Creek situation was an unfortunate one. It was the first time our brand new housing secretariat, which we set up for the purpose of trying to make sure we get more funding from different levels of government and build housing, said, here's a report we've got. Here's some city land, including parking lots in Wards 2, Ward 4, Ward 14, and Ward 5. Hey, can we use some of this space to actually build the much needed housing we have? And the only pushback was out in Ward 5. And so, I think she had to make the decision to say, this is a whole city focused issue. This isn't about individual wards and parking lots here and parking lots there. We'll find solutions to help people with their parking needs. At the same time, we're going to have to build affordable housing. And unfortunately, our council has an even number of people on it. I'm not a fan of that. I think we should have an odd number on there. And when you get to a tie on a citywide issue that, by the way, every member of that council voted in favor of supporting, including the Ward 5 city councillor, right? She had to step in and say, look, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to break this tie. This is a citywide priority and it matters. So I'm glad she did it.
Well put. Let's move on to another issue downtown. I was at Supercrawl for a couple of days over, a few weekends ago.
Good for you. It was fun.
Thank you. It was a great time. It was a great celebration, and I mentioned it on the broadcast. It was a great celebration of everything Hamilton. I did have one person come up to me, off air, and they were asking me about Hamilton City Centre, because that's where we were set up. We were set up right at Hamilton City Centre, and we got a first-hand look at what's going on. They were literally painting it, right? Painting over graffiti the day of. And the person was there with their kids. They said they love downtown, but they were putting lipstick on a pig. And they were concerned about the future of Hamilton City Centre and what's going to happen. What is going to happen with that building? And how can you push, as the councillor, how can you push a solution sooner rather than later?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the city centre is going to get redeveloped at some point. They're going to tear it down. a couple things have to happen before that. They've got to make sure they've got certain financing lined up and timelines lined up. We have rules at the city about demolishing buildings before you're ready to go, because we don't want to have now a hole in the ground. That creates a different kind of situation for people where they start feeling frustrated looking at that all the time. And so as many issues as there may be with the city centre, and I know we're painting it up and making it look a little better, and we're trying to do more of that work, it's probably better for us to have that structure there than to have a hole in the ground for an indefinite period of time. If you look at the James Street Baptist Church near City Hall, where the entire back of the church was demolished, and we've got to look at that for the next number of years. That's been a huge eyesore. So it's a bit of an eyesore as it is now, but it can be much worse of an eyesore if we just sort of tore it down immediately. In terms of the city being able to pressure people to do things, that's not really within our scope, unless we were to seize the property or expropriate the property at a high cost to do that, and then hopefully try and do something with it. When I spoke to folks at the city centre last year about, well, can we use this space for something in the meantime? They said, look, sorry, what we did as day one is we came in here with salvage companies and destruction companies, removed all the sort of plumbing and electrical, and so the building is kind of dead in a certain kind of way. And there's not much that can be done with it when you don't have any ability to use electricity or plumbing or those kinds of things. It would cost millions for us to put it back. So we're in a bit of a strange space. I think it's why it's important for the city to have better policies when people buy big properties like that downtown, so that we can say, wait a minute, before you get in there and start doing salvage and destruction, can we talk about how we might be able to use this until it's built? And that's something that staff are looking into now after I had a conversation with them.
Of course, that's part of a huge block of downtown, of part of your ward that's going to see a lot of development. And part of that is also the Hamilton Arena project.
Yep.
I had Louis Raporti on here last week from Golings, and he's an advisor to the Hamilton Urban Precinct Group. I asked him about his relationship with council. He had said that he's had no engagement with you. He said the group's had no engagement with you. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I guess I've had no engagement from Lou. I mean, Lou knows how to reach me. There are thousands of organizations around the downtown core and, many, many residents. And so I balance my time by responding to requests I get. We haven't had the opportunity to meet, but I'm sure he knows how to find me if he wants to talk. And right now, the mayor is leading on that subject, and she's made it really clear that she wants to be there. She wants to be front and center. She's going to the openings. She's having those conversations, and she's championing that. And so good. We all share the work at City Council, and I'm the Ward 2 City Councillor, but there are tons of things that are seen as citywide assets, including entertainment assets, including things that everyone comes here to enjoy from downtown, like our waterfront. And so occasionally, the mayor's going to take the lead on something, and I'm not. And so good for her. Is
it just you feel you don't have much to contribute to the very specific project of what they're doing? Is that?
I mean, I'm confident that OVG knows what it's doing, right? OVG has been doing this work for a really long time. They're going through the arena process of reconstruction. Truthfully, what am I going to add to that at this point? And the answer is not a lot. They're the experts. Yeah. I think one thing I can do in the future, when they get the BIA online, when we start to see the construction finishing and having conversations about that, I'm sure there's things for me to participate in. Yeah. But nothing's really taking shape at the moment. And frankly, it took a really long time for the city and HUPEG to kind of work out this deal. There's still some questions around that. And I want to wait till that's been sorted out before I'm in any way involved in it, and make sure the public has clear access, transparent access to all the documents, understands the deals we've gotten into, because there's land changing hands and those kinds of things. So for me, until those kind of muddy waters are sorted out, I am keeping a bit of a distance.
But there's a lot of concern on what's going to happen with the Salvation Army property there on the corner. What's your level of concern? Obviously, if the mayor's taking the lead, you still want to have a say. It's a very important part of your ward. That's a very important part of downtown, but also that block even.
Yeah, so when I spoke to the Salvation Army about this, I think maybe a year ago, they said, look, we don't necessarily have any plans to move. I'm also thinking about the Sir Johnny MacDonald School property. There's a lot of property in the area, and I know that folks have had conversations in the past about how to use that property for entertainment. Some folks have talked about casinos. Some folks have talked about other entertainment district things, trying to build hotels or other kinds of things in the area. And so right now, there's not a proposal on the table to say anything about the Salvation Army, but those services are needed downtown. We simply can't say that we're going to have a downtown for those who can afford the amenities here, who can afford some of the higher prices for property here, who can afford a premium box seat at an event, and not folks who are not doing as well. We have extreme poverty in our city, and Ward 2 is the place that's the poorest in our city, and we're one of the poorest cities in Canada in some ways, in some parts of our city. So we have a lot of income inequality to think about, and we can't simply say the downtown is just for some people, not for everybody. And so I'm concerned about making sure, yes, we have a space for people to be, and they're not pushed out.
Well put. Let's talk LRT. Let's stay downtown. Reported in the last few weeks that city, you guys need an answer. Basically, is what I'm hearing. My very simple interpretation of what I've been reading the last few weeks and listening to is that yes, you need an answer from the province on what's going to happen, when a shovel's going to go on the ground, because you're going to have some decisions to make when it comes to road reconstruction projects. What can you tell us as the Ward 2 councillor? Was the latest you've heard of LRT, and when can we expect shovels in the ground?
Well, a couple things. Shovels are already in the ground in Ward 3, and so folks who don't know that, we've already begun to do some work in advance of beginning LRT track construction to make sure we're preparing the site in Ward 3. So that's already started, and that's kind of the heart of the LRT area. But no, we haven't seen a real shovels in the ground. This project is starting. We haven't seen a calendar telling us when things are going to happen. Yeah, it bugs me because businesses are asking, well, wait a minute, do we want to repair some streets down here or do some kinds of things? And I say, well, understandably, we're going to wait for LRT before we tear the street up again and do that work. Not going to do it twice. And so I think one of the issues is that people are feeling impatient, and this has been going on for almost 15 years at this point. We keep asking the province. We keep having those conversations. The mayor is frustrated too. We want to know more about timelines. They're going through the process now of getting the bid out there and getting the project company lined up and all that kind of stuff. And so I think, from my estimation, we're a little ways off, but I'm hoping sometime in the new year we'll have more answers about timelines. But yes, I get the frustration. I'm equally as frustrated. We all want to see this project move ahead.
So when you turn on the news last night and you see the Premier of Ontario at the 401 talking about a feasibility study of a tunnel under the 401, talking about major projects when we have a major project that we're waiting for, is there a certain level of frustration? Is it just an understanding of this is the job? There's the province, then there's us as a municipality. Like when you watched that last night, like what do you think as somebody who is waiting on a major project that's been promised, that's had funding, that's already started?
I mean, for me, Premier Ford and the facts aren't friends. He continues to make statements about things like closing down safe consumption sites, ignoring experts. He continues to propose wild projects at Ontario Place and now digging tunnels under the 401, again, with no expert advice that I can see, and with everybody reaching out saying why these things are unfeasible. I think he's trying to appeal to the imagination of voters coming toward a provincial election and propose a lot of ideas that seem like they're going to do something without a lot of evidence that they're going to work. I'm not frustrated that he's announcing other projects happening in Ontario. Go for it. He hasn't ever signaled at any point that he's not going to continue to fund the LRT in Hamilton. So I'm not going to start taking signs and signals from the Ford government. They're famous for dropping out little carrots here and there and expecting everyone to react to what they're doing. I'm not taking the bait anytime. He can say whatever he wants.
Let's stay on provincial politics. Last week, I guess, you were part of the process that nominated the current independent MPP in Hamilton Centre, Sarah Jama. I know someone you've supported for a very long time. You also put out a tweet as well, basically calling on the NDP. Here it is here. Basically calling on the NDP to support her as an independent or welcome her back into the party. What are your conversations? Not specifics with Sarah Jama. How encouraged is she to continue representing the people of Hamilton? And again, your message to the NDP: would you like to see them welcome her back, or is she better as an independent?
Like, I was at a packed nomination meeting, like you've never seen, with people out to support Sarah Jama recently, and she said pretty plainly there that she's really looking forward to continuing to represent the people of Hamilton Centre. I can't really speak to whether or not the NDP is going to offer her to come back to the party and what she's going to say to that. That's for them to negotiate. But what I will say is I do think it is a mistake to try and do this, try and have a candidate from the NDP run against Sarah Jama. It's one thing to say, you know what, we don't agree 100% on what's going on here. But when you look at the policies that they're talking about as an independent MP and the party, they're extremely alike. So why would the NDP run someone against someone because they don't agree on a couple of issues? To me, that seems silly. The potential there is to do things like split votes. So if the NDP is looking to have a really continued presence in Hamilton overall, I don't think picking a fight in the center of our city is a smart idea.
We've seen MPPs jump to different roles. There is an open MPP NDP spot. Just saying. Would you have any interest in ever jumping? I mean, we talked about municipal politics being, very, very hard work. Not that being an MPP. Do you have any interest in beyond just being a councillor?
Nope, not at this point in my life, certainly. And I mean, I'm really happy with the representation I have in Hamilton Centre. I'm not the kind of person that would ever try and go to a different riding and represent people. To me, that seems weird. If I don't live in your community, I don't really have a right to say I should represent you. And I've really stood on that when I ran in Ward 2, and I've criticized other people for trying to run in places they don't live. And so you'd never catch me being that hypocritical, Louie.
Back in March, I want to switch subjects here. Back in March, you were suspended from the Hamilton Police Services Board. I remember having you on during the time. You said you didn't know much, you hadn't heard back. Would I be surprised to hear you still don't know much, haven't heard back? I mean, this is a pretty long suspension now at this point.
Yeah, it is a really long suspension, which concerns me. I know that in other situations, these things were resolved much more quickly. When former Councillor Lloyd Ferguson, representing Ward 12, had done something that was investigated, that was resolved in a matter of weeks. And so now we're certainly into the months now. It's been more than 6 months, if I recall correctly. I had definitely, at this point, finally have had conversations with the Ontario Civilian Police Commission, but as far as I can tell, they're not really at the end of their investigation yet. And so there's kind of a couple phases left to go. They've got to interview all these people and do an investigation and collect the information and then make a decision about what they're going to do next. If they want to recommend that I be removed from the board, I believe there'll be a public hearing. They could also recommend not to do so. I don't have any more insight, sadly. It's been a long time. It's frustrating because I signed up to be part of that board so I could be transparent, accountable, ask questions, and represent residents. As the densest place in the city where there's a fair bit of crime and public safety issues, having a Ward 2 City Councillor's voice on the Hamilton Police Service Board is important, and I commend my former colleague, Councillor Jason Farr, for also being on the board and also representing the city. I think it's important to have that downtown voice there. So not being there has been detrimental, and I hope they resolve it as soon as they can.
Is there any fear that this could stretch into the next budget process, in which last year got a bit contentious at times? Or are you worried that you might not even get the chance to be a part of, at least on the Police Services Board, you still have your voice on council. Are you worried that you won't have a voice on the board when it comes to budget time?
I am worried because of how long this has taken, but I'm hopeful that it'll be resolved, maybe by November-ish, and then perhaps in the new year I can join in some of those discussions at the board and then at council as well. But, I don't know, sadly, Louie. I wish I did know, but...
We mentioned Supercrawl. Let's end on a positive note there. Your favorite part of the weekend, what it meant to you to get to see all those people, because, again, it was a great weekend, really showcasing the businesses there. Your overall take from Supercrawl a few weeks ago?
Yeah, it's a beautiful event. Like hundreds of thousands of people, according to the organizers, are coming to downtown Hamilton to walk around, have some food. I had a great time having some Egyptian street food, which I really enjoyed, and loved the instrument petting zoo that was put on there, where kids and myself, anyone could go down and learn how to play instruments, like play violins, play trombones, play pianos, and they had musicians there to help you. And so there was a ton of interactive things there for kids. There were a ton of things for people to see, lots of amazing arts and artist vendors, and I bought some art while I was there. It's amazing. I hope it keeps happening. It's really a vibrant part of our downtown life.
Great way to end it there, Councillor. Appreciate your insights on a number of topics. Like I said, I didn't even give you a list. I just said, hope you're ready, because I got a lot of things to talk about. So thanks for making the time and being here today.
Happy to do it.
Awesome. My thanks to Councillor Cameron Kroetsch, representing Ward 2 on Hamilton City Council, for joining me today. And my thanks to you as well. Hey, while you're here, make sure you like and subscribe to CHCH Podcast so you never miss an episode of this show or any of the other great shows we have for you, including Sportsline with Bubba O'Neill. I'd like to thank Mike Corsten today for directing today's show, and thanks to Laura Brody as well, because we could not do the show without you, Laura. From all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louie Butko. Have a great day.